Story 1. TIFU by giving myself acid reflux for 25 years. I'm 34 years old, and I've had excruciating acid reflux since I was about 8. That's 25 years of pain. And I've been taking prescription strength medication every single day just to control it. Even with the meds, I still had terrible symptoms that would sometimes keep me up at night. I even had an endoscopy under general anesthesia to try to discover the cause. Recently, though, I noticed something. My symptoms would tend to start right after I took my evening allergy and asthma medication. And here's the thing. I've been taking these pills since I was about 8 years old, the exact same time my reflux started. Now, I've always been able to easily dry swallow pills without water. I can take a whole handful of pills dry with no problem, so that's just how I've always taken my medication, never thought twice about it. So I decided to Google it, and sure enough, dry swallowing pills can lead to pills getting stuck in your esophagus, and that causes acid reflux. It was that simple. I started taking water with my pills, and I kid you not, my acid reflux symptoms disappeared immediately. Like, gone. It's been a few months now, and I haven't had a single episode of reflux when I used to have it several times a week. 25 years of suffering. All because I didn't drink water with my pills. Story 2. Boyfriend mad at me because he opened up relationship and got no dates. My boyfriend and I are both 37, and we've been dating for just over 3 years. Before this, I was single for 8 years. Overall, it's been a healthy relationship. We're both independent with our jobs and living situations, and I genuinely love spending time with him. I don't really have any complaints. But about 6 months ago, something happened that really startled me. He said he wanted to open the relationship up, meaning going on dates and sleeping with other women. I'd never been in a dynamic like this, so naturally I had a lot of questions. He told me I could also go on dates and sleep with other men, and honestly, I was skeptical at first, but after doing some research and having time to think, I agreed. He told me that if at any point I wasn't comfortable, we could stop and close the relationship up again. One of the rules was we don't discuss with each other what we're doing or who we're going on dates with. So I signed up for a dating app, and within a few days, I had over 500 likes, and it's been pretty steady since. I started matching with people, texting, arranging dates. On average, I go on 1 or 2 dates a month, and there are also some people in similar open relationship dynamics that I'm seeing regularly. I actually quite like the fact that everything is non-committal, so even though I was skeptical at first, I'm enjoying it. As we decided, I hadn't told my boyfriend about any of this. But the other day I was at his house and my phone was on the kitchen counter. He saw my notifications and then proceeded to go through my phone and read my messages, including going through the dating app. To say he was angry is an understatement. Turns out, he opened the relationship up to take out a younger colleague at his workplace, who misread his idea of a date as just a work lunch. He then openly told me that he wanted to see if it would work with her so he could ultimately leave me for her. However, she didn't want him, and it seems like no one else did either. In the last 6 months, he's had a few rough dates, but no one additional to sleep with. I honestly feel embarrassed for him. He demanded we instantly close the relationship up, and I told him that maybe we should just end things or at least take a break. He was outraged and called me names, but he was the one who wanted this dynamic, so what's the problem? I left, and as I walked home, I was contemplating fully breaking it off with him. He's been blowing my phone up, and I'm not quite sure what to say. Story 3. Stop reporting about office burnout. Okay, done. My field of work has a high turnover and a high burnout rate, so my company promotes transparent conversations with staff members to ensure we're all implementing self-care, taking PTO as needed, and asking for managerial support when we're overwhelmed with tasks. Last year, my work began to suffer. I was struggling after losing 2 close family members suddenly, and I was transparent about it, hoping they would understand why I was withdrawn and had lower productivity. But instead, my manager wrote me up as a result of my burnout, citing that I was using our one-on-ones inappropriately, causing stress among the team with my grief, and talking about being burnt out too much. The write-up included every single one-on-one documentation of when I asked for help with burnout. Management instructed me to stop talking about burnout. No problem. I stopped bringing up burnout, stopped being transparent, stopped asking for support. About 2 months later, I requested a 7-week leave of absence, citing extreme burnout and mental health issues. Management was shocked and angry that I didn't tell them I was struggling or burning out. I handed them a copy of my write-up and said, the action plan I received stated I could not talk about burnout anymore. Management was scolded for inadvertently creating a hostile work environment where staff couldn't ask for support. I got 7 weeks off with partial pay, and they had to cover my job for that entire time I was out. Story 4. Boss said I must use my vacation before month end, but also no one can take time off. Company sends a shiny HR email, subject line all caps, use it or lose it. We had to burn our remaining PTO by the 30th, or it evaporates into the sun. Same day, my manager announces in stand-up that due to quarter end, no one can take time off until the 1st. I asked how to reconcile that. He shrugs and says, talk to HR. HR says, talk to your manager. Cute loop. So, I opened the handbook because I'm a petty librarian when annoyed. Page 14 has this little sentence I never noticed. PTO requests not explicitly denied in writing within 48 business hours are considered approved. There's also a note that partial day PTO is allowed in 1-hour blocks. Thank you, legal team. I submitted 10 separate requests. 2 hours every morning next week, 2 hours every afternoon the week after, a random Friday 3 to 5 to watch a plumber, and 1 full day to visit my mom. I sent the requests in our HR portal, which auto-emails the manager and CCs a shared mailbox nobody watches. Then I went back to my tasks and set reminders. 48 business hours pass, no denial. The portal changes each request to approved green checkmark confetti gif. Monday comes, and at 9:58 I put a cheerful note in the team chat, heading out, see you at noon. Manager pings me to hop on a client call. I reply with a screenshot of the policy and the portal approval. Silence. Then 3 dots typing, then nothing. By Wednesday our calendar looked like cheese. Half the team remembered they also had PTO sitting around and started filing it in little blocks. Meetings kept colliding with green bars. Finance realized that if we didn't use the days now, they'd be paid out at separation later, which they hate. HR wrote a new post saying we should coordinate, but that approval's already granted stand. My manager called a huddle to ask why productivity dipped. I said we're following HR's instruction to use PTO. He said he meant in November. I sent him the original email timestamp this month. He sighed and said he never thought anyone would actually read the handbook. I used every hour, took my mom to lunch, and my plumber fixed the cursed sink at 3:40 while I drank tea. Next week, a new policy appeared. PTO must be requested in full-day increments during quarter end, and managers must respond in 24 hours. Thanks for clarifying, truly. Story 5. HOA said every violation gets reported. Okay, every violation gets reported. I live in a townhouse community outside Boise, Idaho. We have an HOA, but it's usually pretty hands-off, like they deal with landscaping the common areas and that's about it. 3 months ago, this guy Marcus moved in 2 doors down and immediately joined the HOA board. Not even waited to see how things work, just straight in. He's been sending violation notices for everything. My neighbor got one because her doormat was burgundy instead of brown or black. I didn't even know that was a rule. Another guy got cited because his car was parked 3 inches over his driveway line into the guest spot. 2 weeks ago, I get a notice. My son left his skateboard on our front porch. Apparently, recreational equipment must be stored out of sight. It was there for maybe 4 hours. He'd just gotten home from school. I asked Marcus if he could maybe just knock on doors for small stuff before sending official notices. He literally said, rules are rules. If I make exceptions, where does it end? Fine. I read the entire HOA covenant, all 47 pages that nobody's looked at since 2008. Turns out there are rules nobody follows. Like, no security cameras visible from the street. Marcus has a Ring doorbell. No decorative flags except US flag on specific holidays. At least 8 houses have those seasonal garden flags. Garbage bins must be stored in garage, not visible from street. Everyone keeps them on the side of their house. No vehicles with commercial signage can park overnight. The plumber 3 houses down has his company van. So I started filing reports. Every single violation I saw. I spent 2 hours walking around with my phone taking photos and filling out the online forms. Submitted maybe 30 violations in 1 week. The HOA president called me. She's this retired lady named Joan who's been doing this volunteer gig for 15 years. She sounded exhausted. Asked me what I was doing. I said I was just making sure all violations get reported equally. Rules are rules, right? She told me they've now got to send out all these notices because they're officially filed and it's a mess because half the board members are getting cited, including Marcus, and people are pissed. Marcus came to my door yesterday. He didn't yell or anything. He just looked tired and asked if we could find a reasonable middle ground going forward. I said, sure, that sounds good. But now Joan keeps giving me these looks like I made her life harder, and honestly, I feel kind of bad about that part. She didn't do anything wrong. Story 6. Won't tell my wife what my son has in savings from my late wife. My wife and I are both in our 40s, and we have a blended family. I have a 16-year-old son with my late wife. My wife has a 13-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son with her ex-husband, and they share custody, and we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old together. When my late wife was sick, she told me she wanted a percentage of the compensation she was issued for her medical misdiagnosis to go to our son's savings. She also had a second savings account she wanted to add to it. This was on top of what the 2 of us had already saved for him before her illness. I honored her wishes, and I've continued saving for our son's future. This is a promise I made to my late wife that I've stood by, and I also promised I would protect it, and make sure it was only ever for him, nobody else. When my present wife and I started seriously dating, we talked about what saving would look like for our kids if we married. She knew I had always saved, as had my late wife. We didn't discuss how much either of us had saved for our existing kids, but we agreed to an amount every month that would be saved for all 3, and this was talked about again when we had children together. Recently, there's been a lot of stress on my wife. Her ex has refused to discuss my stepkid's savings and whether he pays anything or not. She also feels like we haven't been able to save enough every month like promised, because it was just one thing after another. There are months we've missed because of things beyond our control. Life stuff mostly, like things breaking. A few weeks ago, my wife told me we should put all the cards on the table and discuss what all 5 kids have and decide how we proceed with making sure everyone gets what they need for the future. I told her I would happily discuss what I've saved for my oldest, but I would not be discussing the money left by his mom. She pushed back on it and said all the money should be taken into consideration. I told her we don't know what all the money is. I said our parents could be saving money for the kids' futures. Her ex could have money for my stepkids. His parents could have money for my stepkids. We can't say for certain what everyone will have at the end, and it's only fair to discuss what she and I have and can save. She told me it sounds like I don't trust her. I responded by asking why she wants to know this so badly. By only talking about what we've saved, we're on an even footing. She told me if we knew everything, we could focus on the kids, who will have less a little more, that our younger two are probably going to be the worst off long term. And she would be open to combining all the money and dividing it. I told her I was not on board with that, and what my son has from his mom is not going to be shared or used for any of the other kids. We argued about it, but I refused to say, she feels like that's wrong when we're married. I told her it's not my money, nor is it her money, or money that we can or should be accessing. It's from my late wife to our son, and that's all there is to it. My wife said she feels like I'm keeping her in the dark and not trusting her with something important. She said it cuts her ability to fully engage in conversations we need to be able to have and decisions we need to make as a couple. Story 7. Videotape my wife eating all my fries to make a point. I've seen many posts about wives and girlfriends who insist they don't want anything when the husband or boyfriend is getting food, but then proceed to eat his food. So I apologize if this sounds familiar. I don't eat a lot of fast food, but I do indulge when we have long drives. My wife typically packs a lot of healthy snacks for herself, like yogurts, quinoa salads in the cooler, protein bars, whatever. I like McDonald's. She claims the food is disgusting, but then invariably wants a few fries and ends up eating half of them or more, although she always denies eating so many and claims she just had a few. On the trip in question a couple weeks ago, it's me, my wife, and my 13-year-old son, Nick. Wife needs a bathroom, so we pull off at an exit where there's a McDonald's. Son and I go to order food to go while she's in the bathroom. I asked her if she wanted anything, as I always do, and she said no, but I'll take a couple of your fries. My go-to order at McDonald's is the $5 value meal, although now it's $6 at a lot of places, which includes a McDouble, 4 McNuggets, a small fries, and a drink. It's plenty of food for me. It would still be plenty if my wife took a few or a couple fries. I like McDonald's fries, but I always eat them last because while I don't mind if the fries are not piping hot, I do like the other food best when it's still warm. Side note, having read other Reddit stories on this topic, I'm sure some will say just order more fries, even though she says she doesn't want anything. I've tried. I get a medium for me and give her the small from the value meal, but a medium fries is almost $4, and that's adding over 60% to the cost of the meal. And when I've done this, she insists on not touching the fries because I told you not to get any for me. So now I've got a small fries and a medium fries to eat on my own, which I can do, but it seems like a waste to spend another $4 since I was perfectly happy with the original amount of food. Anyway, on this day, I tell my son I want to do an experiment. I tell him after we get our food and get back to the car, take out all of his food, take my burger and give it to me, and take my McNuggets and hold them in the back seat, so that the only thing left in the bag is my fries. Now, admittedly, a small fries at McDonald's isn't that many, but it's typically at least 20 to 30 fries. I tell him to put the bag with the fries on the console between my wife's and my seat, and to set up his phone to take a video of the bag from the back seat, which will record until I tell him to stop. I tell him that I am not going to put my hand in the bag at any time, and I predict that his mom will eat all of my fries. Sure enough, we're driving along. I eat my burger, make some small talk, see my wife's hand go into the bag several times. I ask my son for my McNuggets. I eat those. No sauce, so no mess in the car. Chit-chat further, all the while smirking to myself as I see my wife's hand go back into the bag some more. Finally, she says, "Okay, give me your garbage," and starts putting it in the McDonald's bag. I say, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Cleaning up." I say, "I still need to eat my fries," and she says, "We ate them all." Honey. I'll admit I overacted a bit here on purpose, incredulously announcing loudly, "What do you mean we ate them all? I haven't had any." To be clear, I wasn't mad. This was the result I expected anyway. But I tried to act mad while suppressing laughter. She said, "Don't be silly. I only had a couple." And I repeated that I had not had a single fry and that I had video evidence to prove it. She said, "What do you mean?" And I said that Nick had taken a video of the past 20 minutes or so, and you will not see me take any fries from that bag. So if they're all gone, it's because you ate them all. And she blew up at me and him in a way that I did not expect, yelling about videotaping without consent, as if I had made a secret sex tape or something egregious like that. Yelling at Nick for going along with your father's foolish pranks. I told her I just wanted her to understand that she eats more of my food than she realizes. And this is why I would prefer to just get her a separate order of fries, so that we can both enjoy our food without resentment. She never watched the video, although I think she now believes that she did in fact eat all the fries. However, she's been ignoring me and worse, treating our son badly, blowing up at him for little things that never have bothered her before, for the past 2 weeks, expecting an apology for videotaping her, I guess. I thought this was a harmless way to make my point. Story 8. Refusing to give my coworker their office back now that WFH has been canceled. Back in 2023, a woman named Jen in my building left for maternity leave. After having her child, Jen took advantage of our company's work-from-home program, which left her office open. I placed in a request for the space with my manager, was given the go-ahead, so I got to leave my crappy cubicle for my very own private office. My employer has announced that work from home will end on November 17th, 2025. All employees are to be back in the office by that date. Yeah, that sucks, I know. Yesterday, work-from-home employees came in for tours and desk assignments. When Jen saw I was in her office, she became agitated and asked if I'd be leaving so she could take back over. I told her flatly that I had no intent to give up the office. Jen spoke with a manager about this, and management's immediate decision was that I was under no obligation to move out of the office. I was approached and asked if I had any interest in returning to a cubicle. I said no, and there was no follow-up from my manager or HR, as they both see the matter as closed. Now, just a day later, I'm getting complaints from coworkers who think I'm punishing Jen for something outside her control. Jen has also emailed me asking me to consider the position she's in, and that she's already being punished by the company by being compelled to return to the building, and asking me to consider her feelings. Sincerely, I definitely understand how much this sucks for her and everyone else being forced to come back, but I like having my own office. I have a lot of stuff in here that I'd otherwise have to carry back home. I'd be giving up the privacy that I've become adjusted to, and if I'm being honest, I enjoy actually having a nice window to look out and none of the noise of the cubicles. Update: something someone brought up that I hadn't considered was the question of, if I vacated the office, would that necessarily mean Jen could have it back? On Monday, my manager had approached me about returning to a cubicle to verify my lack of interest. But this morning, I checked with HR on the policy. Sure enough, you cannot simply choose someone to give your office to, as office assignments are selected by policy. The office would go into the pool if I vacated, which means Jen would be competing with everyone else over it. Several of the work-from-home people who have returned are more senior than her, and at least one of them is definitely interested in the next bidding that comes up, so Jen would be out of luck. HR is going to circulate a reminder on the office bidding policies. I also brought up the email with my manager, who stated she will reply to it and CC and Jen's manager to ensure there is an understanding that this matter should be considered closed. Story 9. Giving my dad a list for his 50th birthday of all the times he failed me. My dad turned 50 last week. His wife was on my case to write a nice card and pick out a present for him. I'm 17, by the way. So I gave him the list I wrote to keep track of all the times he made me miss extracurricular activities so her kids wouldn't miss theirs. That was my present for him. I didn't even get a card or write in one. That was my gift to him. I knew it was going to piss him and his wife off, but I kept track of that stuff, and it has always bothered me because he became such a lazy dad to me when he started dating his wife. They asked me what the hell kind of milestone present that is, and I told them it was the gift of having his eyes open to the way he prioritized her kids over me. She told me it was so incredibly arrogant to keep a list like that and obsess over the times he did something to show her kids he cared. I told her he could have figured out a way to do nice things for both of us, but as soon as they met, he cared more about her and proving himself to her than he did about being a good dad. Here's the background. My mom isn't around. I don't know why. My dad never gave me an answer about what happened to her. I only remember him though, and he met his wife when I was 7. They dated for years without living together, but started all the way back. Then he would get me kicked out of activities for no showing because he said he'd take his wife's kids to theirs, and for some reason he couldn't get all 3 of us to our activities. Dad had me in football from 5 to 7. I got kicked off the team after 6 no-shows without explanation. Each of those times was because he dropped her kids off at theirs and said he didn't have time to drop me off at mine. Then he had me in karate. I went for a month, and then he didn't take me for 2 months. They told him I couldn't go back if I wasn't going to be there every week because there was no way for me to learn. He signed me up for another football team. Same thing happened. He didn't take me to one of the games and several practices, so I got kicked. I asked for art classes, and he said, sure, that'll keep you busy and out of my hair. I lasted 4 months in those classes before several no-shows meant they told Dad I couldn't come back because I was missing important lessons. He signed me up for basketball. Same thing happened. I only went once, though. Swimming was the same, and the last time I did get to go, he didn't pick me up on time. I got into dance classes when I was 14 and thought this can work. I'll walk. But then he'd pick me up and say he'd drop me, but then he wouldn't. And I didn't get to connect with anyone to get a ride off their parents because I wasn't in dance long enough. Instead of being at something for me, I had to sit in the car or watch his wife's kids do their stuff. The kid he dropped off last is the one he stayed to watch, or parked outside the activity of, and they had loads of activities. My dad and his wife only moved in together when I was 14, so he was doing all this for kids he didn't live with and messing me over in the process. Then, he refused to pay for anything because he decided to take over paying for his wife's kids. I hold it against him, and yeah, I tried to talk to him in a calm and mature way, but he brushed me off. So I resented him more for it. I told his wife when she complained about my attitude, and she was like, so what? That told me all I needed to know. But the birthday thing, I gave him the list, and they made a big deal out of it. But instead of giving me the cold shoulder, they decided to bring it up multiple times since, and they've complained so much that I'm tired of hearing it. I told them I didn't care about my dad's birthday or his feelings, because he won't confront that he didn't deserve anything from me. Story 10. Told my neighbor her son's jail sentence is his fault, not the victim's. So my neighbor's son was in the police academy, and I guess he had to do an internship at a juvenile facility. One of the inmates there was a 13-year-old girl, so apparently this girl stripped naked to entice him, and they had sex. I don't know whether they got caught or the girl told, but it was found out, and now he is in prison for unlawful sexual activity and is doing 25 to life with no chance of parole. My neighbor is saying it's the girl's fault because she enticed him, and men can't control themselves. I told her that was complete nonsense. Men have control, he was the adult, and it was his responsibility to tell her to put her clothes on and walk away. She got mad saying men can't control that. I said, so you're saying he has no reasoning ability and that he is no more than an animal. which is another reason he should not be around a vulnerable demographic. She called me horrible and went back to her house in tears. I told her the only people in the wrong in this scenario were her and her son, her for trying to blame a child, and him for falling for it and abusing a child. My husband says he knows I was right, but I should have said nothing. As a child who was abused and blamed for it by adults, I can't. I was assaulted when I was 7 by an uncle, and my mother told me it was my fault because I enticed him by always being around. She literally brought me to his house and she said I should have waited outside then and nothing would have happened. So when my neighbor said that, it triggered me. My husband hugged me and said he gets it and then apologized. But part of me wonders if I was wrong for telling my neighbor the truth.